You were incorporating external stuff too. Like I used to play tournament poker quite a bit. And so you study things like game theory, chaos theory, and then suddenly I would hear someone like you in the jujitsu community bring this stuff up and bring it into this game. And I'm like, finally.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So like I didn't invent chaos theory. I read a book, right? I didn't come up with any of the like cognitive learning strategy stuff. I didn't like this is none of this is me inventing anything. This is just me being like, hey, the like the Soviet bloc, they train their wrestlers with a lot of very light gameplay stuff and a lot of steroids. But like but that's every Olympic program, right? So the Cuban boxing program, same thing. It's like very, very light contact. The Thai boxers, they don't go hard to the head in training, right? So there's just a lot of stuff out there like that. And you looked at jiu-jitsu and you looked at MMA, which were both very young sports, and everyone was going full balls all the time. The shoot the box guys, the Militich fighting system, these guys all left their chins in the gym. If you talk to anyone from those camps now, they're all brain dead in their 40s and 50s. Like they're all slurring their speech. They've all got CTE. I was just comparing, okay, this is how like the more established sport, boxing's been around for 100 years, kind of in the rough format that we see it. When was the last time you saw like a professional boxing match be called off due to an injury in training camp? It didn't really happen. And then like every other UFC card was like, oh, so and so got injured, this happened, that happened. Like fighters pull out all the time. Now MMA is a more dangerous sport than boxing, so there's obviously an element to that. But man, people were training like absolute cavemen, in the 2000s, let alone in the 90s when the sport was basically being like, I shouldn't say invented, but being more popularized, certainly in North America. So it was just such a obvious comparison for me to be like, these two sports that are being trained like really in an unsophisticated fashion, let's just train them in a way that more professional, more developed sports with a little bit of science behind them are training, and just try to do it that way. So I don't think that I was being some like incredible contrarian. I think I just did a basic analysis on what is missing. Like there's a concept called like low hanging fruit, right? Like what is a simple thing that you can do that will just like have pretty like massive impact on whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying to achieve. And so just making it more like the other sports was low hanging fruit, right? Like I always say for the first 5 or so years, like I opened my school in 2012. I'm on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, in Canada. So this is a very, very undeveloped area. Like when I got here, I was only the second black belt on the island. And so most of the tournaments that we would do, there weren't really any like remotely legit tournaments on Vancouver Island.
Yeah, people go to Google Maps and look at it.
Yeah, we're geographically pretty isolated. Like you go to the end of Canada and then you have to take a boat to get to me. So we would compete in Vancouver on the mainland. But even back then, not that many schools. I could reliably tell my students that when we go to a tournament, you're going to have better movement. And I could basically look at the names of the clubs and I'd be like, okay, that person's not going to be very good. That person's not going to be very good. That person might be good. Oh, there's a club. There's a good club. It used to be hard to find a good club. Now it's hard to find a bad club. So like when we first started out for the first 5 years, we had such a like competitive advantage because we were studying what the best guys were doing and we had good training methodology. So we could show up and have really good results as a very small club without really optimizing our fitness or like any of this other stuff. We just got really good results. And like I said, that we still get good results in competition, but nowadays I'm having to tell my people, like, if you're not in shape, you're going to be in trouble. If you're not sharp, our training has had to evolve quite a bit because back then we were just technically better than almost anybody we were facing. And that's not true anymore. The information is out there. You can go on YouTube. It used to be if you went on YouTube, it was hard to find good information. Now it's hard to find bad information, right? So there's a lot more going on. A lot more people are coaching in more sophisticated ways, right? Like there's probably half a dozen schools in the Vancouver area that are coaching in like really intelligent fashion. There used to be none, right? No one was putting much thought into how they were teaching, right? So yeah, things are definitely changing. So like, yeah, I mean, I think that over time, my approach has kind of proved right, right? Like it's more and more people will adapt it if they want to have those results, but not everyone wants those results. Like for some people, this is still just a business. They just want to have a busy club. They don't really care about the ultimate results other than like their own bottom line.
Mhm.
So, and coaching well is difficult. I've said this many times. Like, people always ask me, like, "Oh, you know, do you think everyone's going to teach like this eventually?" I'm like, nope. No, I think there will still be a pretty good chunk of, like, this is a sport that is done 95% by hobbyists. Most people don't compete, and you can have a thriving school and not have like outstanding teaching practices or even good teaching practices, because for most, the level of education in the on the part of the consumer is still low in a lot of areas, and the pressure to actually be a good coach, where that's part of the decision making for someone, it's just not that high. If you make the schedule accessible, if you have a nice facility, if you have good advertising, blah, 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 those are all things that are much easier to do than becoming a good coach. And so most people, not only will they direct their resources to those areas, they're better off. They're like, if you're honest with yourself, you're like, I don't want to do the hard work of being a really good coach. What I want to do is have a comfortable life and have my school be thriving. I still think that a lot of people, when faced with that decision, they're not going to make that decision. That's very much a passion decision versus a business decision. I do think we'll get to a point maybe where, if there's enough of an educated consumer base, and in some areas that's true, right? Like, in some areas, if you don't have a reputation as a good coach, you're not going to thrive. So it does happen in certain pockets, but man, like, the amount of work that I had to do to like study all of this different shit from stuff outside of jiu-jitsu and study the cutting edge of jiu-jitsu, like, it's really hard for me to keep up. Back then it was a lot easier because the pace of development in jiu-jitsu was lower. You know, there'd be a meta shift every 3, 4, 5 years. Now there's a meta shift every 6 months. So it's really hard to stay on top. And Nogi and Gi have split off so much. It used to be so easy for me to stay on top of the Gi game, and then there'd be a tiny, leg locks are a thing now in Nogi. Like, once in 10 years, there was a big shift, right? Now I'm like, it's really tough to stay on top of the game. So like I said, like, if somebody who cares about it as much as I do is having a hard time keeping up, I can only imagine somebody who just doesn't care that much is not going to do it.